Now, on BBC One, the news and sport with Martyn Lewis and David Icke. The time, it's almost 9:21.
British embassy staff have been safely evacuated from Afghanistan. The chargé d'affaires says danger and diplomacy don't mix. And the prison officers say their dispute could go nationwide. The Home Office has contingency plans. Good evening. Staff from the British Embassy in Kabul have been flown out of Afghanistan to Delhi. With them on the specially chartered plane were a number of French diplomats. All of the Western missions in the Afghan capital have now closed down. Rebel forces have been closing in on the capital, and there were fears for the safety of diplomats once Russian troops completed their withdrawal.
The Soviets say that of the 25,000 Russian soldiers once in Kabul, only about 1,000 now remain. As military convoys assemble each morning in the bitter cold for the dangerous journey northwards and homewards, the Soviet Foreign Minister, Eduard Shevardnadze, is saying that the last soldier will leave on February the 15th, while his deputy, Uli Vorontsov, who's also ambassador to Afghanistan, says they'll all be gone inside 4 days. The staff of the British Embassy in Kabul have already gone. They moved out, complete with equipment and documents, this afternoon, to fly to Delhi, where the chargé d'affaires, Ian Mackley, arrived with his weary party this evening.
Having stayed in Kabul throughout the war, throughout the resistance to Soviet occupation, we regret having to pull out just as the Soviet troops themselves are about to complete their own withdrawal. Our concern is that the lack of progress towards a political settlement means that Kabul almost inevitably is going to become more dangerous in the near future. Diplomats are not used to working in dangerous situations. You cannot conduct diplomacy in dangerous situations. So although we regret the need to withdraw in the absence of any other settlement, we hope to go back there very soon.
As the Soviet troops depart, their diplomats and ministers are trying to persuade Iran and Pakistan to help end hostility and develop dialogue between Afghans, which means persuading the Mujahideen, poised in the mountains beyond, not to launch their final onslaught on the city, where food is running short and tension is rising.
A few minutes ago, our correspondent Lise Doucette came on the line from Kabul, and I asked her just how close the Mujahideen were to the city.
It's clear that the Mujahideen are very close to the city. You only have to travel a few miles north of the capital along the main highway, and you can hear the sounds of artillery and small gunfire, indicating that there has been heavy fighting between the government troops and the Mujahideen. Also, we have heard today that there has been heavy bombing by the government, as well as fighting in the area just west of the capital, where the forces of one of the strongest Mujahideen commanders are stationed. I think what we're seeing now is the Afghan government is trying to reinforce its defences around the capital, and it's trying to send a very stern message to the Mujahideen that just because the Russian troops have departed doesn't mean that Kabul is any weaker, and they're not about to stand for any kind of rocket or any kind of other attacks on the city.
Here, the Wandsworth prison dispute could soon spread to other jails throughout England and Wales. Officers at the prison say they've had firm offers of support from other areas, and the Home Office is believed to be preparing contingency plans.
This evening, after a quiet day, the 1,500 inmates at Wandsworth Prison are settling down to another night under supervision by the police, who've been manning the jail since last Monday. Officials of the Prison Officers Association at Wandsworth spent the day working out new proposals, which they'll put to the Home Office on Monday. They say the Prisons Department will find the offer hard to resist, but if no progress is made, the union says other prisons will soon be affected. On Tuesday, there's to be a national delegate conference about Wandsworth, and the Wandsworth men are confident they'll find support.
Branches up and down the country realise that Wandsworth Prison, in fact, are the subject of abuse by prison management. And I think that they will come fairly and squarely on our side and give us all the support that we require at this very difficult time.
Among the prisons which might support Wandsworth are Pentonville, also in London, and Wakefield Prison in Yorkshire. But though the union says the dispute will escalate, Wandsworth's governor is sceptical.
The POA might be in some difficulty to persuade the rest of the prison officers in the country to join their anarchistic display. I can't see that there's any sympathy for that among any ordinary decent prison officers.
Meanwhile, the dispute is still disrupting normal procedures at Wandsworth. Visitors to the jail today faced longer delays than usual before getting in to see prisoners.
Health officials are trying to trace the cause of a new outbreak of Legionnaires disease. So far, 5 people have been affected. They had all visited the area of central London, bounded by Oxford Street, Regent Street and St James's Park. The Department of Health has appealed to doctors throughout the country to report any suspected cases among patients of pneumonia among patients who were in that area of London during January and early February.
Investigators from Westminster City Council have narrowed the source to part of central London that includes the main shopping areas of Oxford Street and Regent Street. The January sales brought thousands of people here from all over the country, just at the time when it's thought the outbreak started. Doctors nationwide are being asked to report any cases of suspected Legionnaires' disease.
Anybody who's been to that part of London during the month of January and has developed pneumonia could be a possible associated case, and therefore it could be as widespread as people come to London from.
Although the BBC's broadcasting house, the source of an outbreak of Legionnaires' disease last April, is close to the area identified, a Department of Health spokesman said there was no reason to connect it with the latest cases. But buildings with similar cooling systems are being investigated by environmental health officers.
The Catholic Church in Paraguay has called on the country's new leader to keep his promise to allow democracy. General Andres Rodriguez has now been sworn in, but controversy is growing over his links with drug traffickers. Up to 250 people are now thought to have died in yesterday's coup, which overthrew General Stroessner's dictatorship.
Thousands of people in Asuncion have been celebrating the coup, although their joy has been marred by the news that so many people died in yesterday's fighting. But the overthrow of General Stroessner, the dictator who ruled for 34 years, has been widely welcomed. The country's new leader, General Rodriguez, has been sworn in as president, and he's pledged to respect human rights and to make democracy a reality. But American newspapers report that the general has had links with heroin smugglers. One paper quotes a secret State Department report alleging that Rodriguez is the country's #1 drug trafficker. So is Paraguay's new leader directly involved in the drug trade?
The United States government believed that to be the case. They declared him persona non grata back in 1970, following the extradition of a French drug smuggler from Paraguay, when President Nixon threatened to cut off aid to Stroessner.
Washington's reaction to the coup has been distinctly lukewarm.
We have noted that General Rodriguez, in his initial broadcasts, stated that he led this uprising, quote, for the initiation of democratization in Paraguay and for the respect of human rights, unquote. We would welcome any genuine movement toward a more democratic form of government in that country.
For the moment, General Rodriguez is savoring the sweet taste of power, but his country's transition to democracy is far from assured.
In South Africa, the 3 leading white anti-apartheid groups are joining forces to form a new political party. It will challenge the far-right Conservative Party as the main opposition in the South African Parliament.
The largest grouping in the new party will be the Progressive Federal Party, which includes Helen Suzman among its members of Parliament, but which lost its role as official opposition to the far-right Conservatives 2 years ago. The new party, to be called the Democratic Party, hopes to reassert anti-apartheid pressures in white politics. Dennis Worrell, former ambassador in London, is joining with his Independent Party, hoping that the new force could attract other defectors like himself from President Botha's government. But the new grouping has failed so far to choose a single leader, and that could weaken its formal launch in 2 months' time.
Scotland just managed to stop England pulling off the Grand Slam at Twickenham. With that and the rest of the day's sport, David Icke.
The hoped-for revival of English rugby failed to happen at Twickenham today. Expectations of winning the Grand Slam title for the first time in 9 years disappeared when they were held to a 12-all draw by a spirited Scottish side.
They were full of commitment and, you know, we got a draw. We've got a lot of work to do, but, yeah, I mean, slightly disappointed.
We came down here as complete no hopers, and, you know, we can't be disappointed with 12-all, you know.
In Cardiff, there was more disappointment for Wales as they lost to Ireland. They went down by 19 points to 13 in a match that only came to life in the second half. Football, the Wimbledon midfield player Vinnie Jones has been sent off again. Jones was dismissed for head-butting an opponent in the 1-1 draw at Everton. He was sent off there last year. Alan Smith scored his 19th goal of the season as the leaders Arsenal beat West Ham 2-1. But the Arsenal players Tony Adams and Paul Davis have had to pull out of England's friendly in Greece next week because of injury. Norwich were hoping to continue their challenge away at Charlton, who are once again threatened by relegation.
Charlton's recent history is of constant crisis, bankruptcy, homelessness, and then the threat never realised of relegation. Even now, after 2.5 seasons back in Division 1, this friendly club still struggles to look the part. Modestly supported, they're temporary tenants at Crystal Palace. The one permanency is the manager, over 6 years in the job.
It's been an eventful time, you know, and I'm pleased to have come through that. And obviously you form quite an emotional attachment to a club, having experienced all those problems. And I just hope that we can stay in the First Division and we continue to go on from there.
3 minutes into the second half, that all looked reasonable enough. As today's visitors Norwich dithered, Lee first tried his luck, then Crooks. Charlton's 5th consecutive win looked on, but really it was like a red rag to a bull. Less than 3 minutes later, Norwich were level. Phelan's cross, Allen's stunning volley. The game was won a quarter of an hour later. Townsend is proving Norwich's most eye-catching player this season. He found Boulder's blind spot to register his side's 8th away win in 11 matches and suggests that come April, it could be the same old story for Charlton. Charlton 1, Norwich 2.
Nigel Clough scored twice for Nottingham Forest as their surge continued with a 3-2 win at Luton. And John Aldridge gained a point for Liverpool in their 2-2 draw at Newcastle. Arsenal are still 3 points clear at the top. Coventry stay third after a 1-1 draw at Middlesbrough, while Forest move up to 4th. Gordon Jury scored 5 for the second division leaders Chelsea in their 7-0 win at Walsall.
Hundreds of East Enders can sleep safely in their beds tonight after being forced out of their homes yesterday by a bomb from the Blitz. 50 years after the Luftwaffe dropped the £2,000 bomb on Whitechapel in East London, it was uncovered on a building site. A bomb disposal team steamed the explosive from the body of the giant bomb. Then they blew up the detonator. Hundreds of people living nearby who spent last night sheltering in council offices are now back in their own homes. And now I'll look at some of tomorrow's front pages. The Mail on Sunday says a jail riot followed the prison officers' dispute at Wandsworth last week and it was covered up. The Sunday Times says that Mrs. Thatcher is backing a visit to Moscow by Prince Edward. He's apparently going in April. And another royal story in The Observer, a report that Prince Charles is to bid for a £30 million